Good afternoon. My name is Cody Kaler, and this is Crossing the Finish Line, presented by A&Z Trucking. This is a podcast we've been wanting to start here for a couple months, and I'm happy to present it to everybody. This podcast will be focused on supply chain and logistics. We're going to bring on a lot of professionals with years of experience and able to talk about some of the hot topics. My guest today is Dustin Sanders. He is from Associated Food Stores. He's been on their inbound team for longer than I can remember. He'll be able to give us background on that. And yeah, without further ado, let's bring on Dustin.
Hello.
Hey, Dustin. Looks like we are having some technical difficulties with his video, so we're going to proceed with just audio.
Good. I wish.
Yeah, how's it going today, buddy?
Doing really well. And yourself?
Doing well. So, Dustin, we'll have you kind of give us a recap of your background. But just, to let everybody know, Dustin and I have worked together for almost 20 years now. 05 is when I started there. So we've been working together in one form or another for the last 19 years. Dustin's one of the best minds that I know when it comes to logistics and especially produce. When we started this, we wanted to have a heavy emphasis on food and bev. And Dustin was one of the very first people that came to mind because he's got, a couple decades of experience, and he has probably forgot more about logistics and produce than I will probably ever know. So without that, Dustin, go ahead and give us a little background on yourself.
A little background. Well, coming up on 24 years working with Associated Foods. Great company, great people. Kind of helps with all the chaos and logistics that we have to deal with. So it's nice to have a stable foundation to stand on. Not all 24 years in the logistics, but probably about 17 of them, I guess. Produce, little over 20 years. And that's what I deal with on the logistics side, is bringing in our fresh produce. We kind of oversee 600 retailers that we have to make sure that we're getting the best product here at the best rate. So it's challenging, but it's fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. And produce is a completely different beast than a lot of the other commodities and logistics as well. So really quick. So what makes produce so difficult in your opinion compared to other reefer freight? Because a lot of carriers think that hauling deli meat and cheeses is the same as hauling produce. But as I know, and as you know, with as many years of experience as you have, it's a completely different beast.
It truly is. A lot of it is just all the, background stuff that nobody really sees unless you're in the trenches, so you're dealing with inspections, you're dealing with unions, and so you kind of, the carriers, the drivers, they've got to have a large plate of patience with dealing with the produce sheds and just the commodity on its own. You make a 1 p.m. appointment to load, and you might get product starting to roll on the truck at 8 p.m.
Yep.
If it gets held up or anything, it slows the whole process down. So produce kind of makes the whole thing challenging, just because the second it's harvested, it's dying. And so it's just a speed race from there on to get it back and get it fresh. So there's a lot of little behind the scene things that make it its own little animal. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because, before I got into produce, because I've been in logistics for a little over 20 years now, but really heavy in produce the last 6. I didn't realize, and I guess it's just naive of me, that, most of those trucks, that product is being harvested that day, right? It's not like it's picked the day before and staged and cleaned and all that fun stuff and cooled. It's literally picked in the morning, cooled, and then loaded onto that truck that exact same day. Because to your point, as soon as it's picked, it's dying, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. A lot of people probably don't know that the majority of our produce that we consume every day are coming from California, especially during the summer. And, finding the right labor to do that every single morning for the demand, it's a huge challenge. So, I'm friends with a lot of shippers. I know you know a lot of the shippers we go with as well. We've both done tours. We've both been out there in the fields, and it's a major challenge. I feel for those guys just as much as I feel for our carriers and our customers. But um, it's a completely different animal. If we have a load of deli meat, for example, we know that that's ready usually the day before. That stuff is actually prepared, far before that, but it's usually staged, ready to load. We're in and out of the dock in an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Where produce, I mean, we've worked together on several trucks, just you and I, where it takes a day or two, and
Yeah.
and then don't even get me started on cross border stuff. I mean, the delays.
Well, and that
Easy.
a lot of that has to do with our buying team they've been in the buying seats for probably close to 40 years.
Wow.
So when they come in the morning, they're checking inventory to kind of see how sales went, and then they got to determine what I need, what I missed, and that kind of drives the day. For what trucks we need and how fast can we get it loaded. Do we need a team to get it back faster? So there's a lot of behind the scene things that go into it that affect it. So, and with that affects overall rate of produce.
Yep. Yeah, and it's one of the few commodities that really is just in time, right? I mean, that term gets thrown around a lot in the food and bev industry, but it is very just in time. To your point, they're buying based off of what you guys sold the previous day, regardless of what projections are saying, right?
Right. I mean, you've got kind of if it's an ad item that you've ran, or 4th of July, you kind of have an idea. We should sell 50 loads of watermelon, 60 loads of corn, but I don't mean Monday you buy 50 loads of watermelon.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you are staying fresh and keeping the product rolling in and staying on top of the store's needs. So it's challenging for sure.
Yep. Yeah, and our company was founded on, we are a 3PL. We were founded on actual produce. Our CEO started the company on the back of his produce wholesale company in New York. So that's it's in our blood, right? It's the majority of what we move is produce. And the last 6 years has really taught me a lot about the difference between produce rate and everything else. And, I feel for a lot of the guys in your seat at all the different companies, because, you compare yourselves to some of the guys that are in the seat on, booking trucks that are dry or booking normal reefers or even flatbeds, for example. Flatbeds can be challenging, but I think that produce has so many things that can go wrong versus that, very rarely are you going to get that perfect load, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be loaded on time, ready on time, in the exact quantities. Quantities is another issue too that we don't bring up that often. You guys might order 1,000 cases or 1,000 pieces, and you're probably only going to get 600 or 700 of them. And
yeah, for sure.
And that's going to cause you to have more trucks throughout the week, and the buying cycles are so much more frequent with produce because you can't really have back stock. Shrink has always been an issue for most warehouses as well when it comes to produce, and it's just it's fun. It's very challenging. It keeps us on our toes, and Associated's very lucky to have somebody like you with the experience that you have running their produce team. So
thanks.
Yeah. So how do you think this year's gone so far? For everybody who doesn't know, the main produce season switches between Yuma, Arizona and Salinas, California, right? And it happens twice a year, usually in April, and then either end of October, first part of November. The summer growing region is in Salinas, California, and then the winter region is in Yuma, Arizona. So this year, so we switched in April. So how do you think this summer has gone compared to the last couple of summers, Dustin?
Well, on the one main stage, weather has kind of been on our side this year. Normally, that's one of the big issues on that changeover. Growers and farmers trying to make sure everything's ready and growing good, and then you have a storm or something blow through and kind of delays. So we haven't had to deal with really any of that so far. Fingers crossed, but
Yeah.
um, it it is one of the bigger delays and or pushbacks. When we do make that switch. So overall, volume's been really good. We haven't had to struggle too much with muddy fields or anything like that, which just kind of makes for a smooth transition. Um, we'll see how it goes when we switch back. That's usually the the
Yeah.
tough switch back, but so far, we've kind of gone through pretty smooth.
Yeah. Knock on wood. It's definitely been easier. As he touched on with some of those weather concerns, it's like we had two extremes the last 2 years, right? Like last year we had insane flooding in Salinas. I don't know if you
Yeah,
saw the videos, but it was just crazy, right? And then the year before that, we had such a bad drought that it was just devastating. So actually get a normal summer has been kind of relieving, and it's been nice. I know nationally the volumes are down across the board, especially coming out of California. You guys are situated in a nice niche market though, in the West, right? You guys are based in Utah,
right.
and but I think definitely it's been a little bit softer across the boards, but at least to your point, I think you guys have played or stayed pretty steady Eddie, which has been nice. Um,
Yeah, I haven't had an opportunity to see numbers compared, this holiday compared to last year's holiday.
mhm.
I just know the truckload volume was pretty across the board. It seemed like we were right on track, but again, I haven't seen the numbers. We could be a little soft. We could be a little harder, but overall, it seemed like we kind of went through it pretty smooth and didn't have really any hangups or hiccups. So
Yeah, definitely been an easier summer than the last couple of years for sure.
yeah.
So still on the subject of produce. So in your opinion, what makes a good produce carrier versus just a regular carrier? Because some people think trucks are trucks are trucks. Reefers are reefers are reefers. But we both know that that's not the case.
That is
Uh,
definitely not the
yeah.
case.
So in your opinion, since you've been at this for a long time and you work with a lot of different carriers, brokers like myself, what makes somebody a good produce carrier versus just a regular carrier?
Well, I think it starts, basically like you in your chair. Someone that understands the produce side of things and has that patience and knowledge of, hey, you've got to be there early, but that don't mean you're going to get loaded early. And just the communication factor, if we are held up or if there are issues or whatnot, that helps a ton. And then just making sure that you've got those quality drivers that aren't in a rush or they don't need to stop at their um, house on the way home or anything like that. They understand that this product needs to get back as soon as possible. And with carriers like yourself, I think we've kind of filtered out a lot of the bad that we had to deal with. And I think a lot of it is just kind of going through that first little process of growing pains and understanding that this isn't deli meat. And I'm not discrediting the other commodities, but it is a whole lot different. And trying to get the drivers in that are patient enough to not drop a load or leave us behind or whatever. It takes a little bit of time to kind of grow that rapport and understanding from the carriers that we have on board. And so far, I think we've got you know a pretty good lineup. But you know how it is in the trucking business. It could change tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and but that's a great point though. Is the drivers themselves? If you have a driver who's used to it's kind of like an unwritten rule, 2 hours before detention kicks in across the board, right? Produce is completely different. If your drivers are used to that, and your drivers are used to getting loaded in the first hour or two versus just checking in at noon, hoping that you're going to be one of the first trucks loaded, and then realizing that the product's not even going to be cooled until
And you're behind 20 trucks.
Yeah, you're behind 20 trucks, and there's probably some trucks that are still spilled over from the previous day that are waiting on product, and getting those drivers that understand the difference between it and having that patience it's so critical. It's critical for us as well, for us to make sure that we're using those carriers that understand that. It makes my life a lot easier, makes your life a lot easier, makes the driver's lives a lot easier. And I've also ran into, pricing for produce is a little bit different than pricing for regular freight as well, because of some of the issues or challenges that we've mentioned. And it takes a different animal, and the majority of our carriers that we use on our produce loads, they don't really haul other commodities for us, except for backhauls, right? Backhauls are a different story, but, and the reason for that is because once they're in produce, they understand produce. You want to keep those drivers, those carriers in that, because it is a small, in the grand scheme of things. If you look at a grocery store, usually the produce section's a tenth of the grocery store.
Yeah.
And so it's even less than that when it comes to the freight market. The amount of produce that moves compared to everything else is, if I remember right, it's less than 4% or something like that of total freight move. So, getting those specialized carriers and getting those carriers that understand, and then, the reefers, don't even get me started on that, because if you've got a reefer that's over, 4 years old, and you're going to put it on a cherry load, or you're going to put it on a berry load, you might as well just write that blank check for a claim right then and there.
Yeah. And that's a couple bucks that you have to take off the books for sure.
Yep. And they're so fickle. It's such a fickle commodity, right?
Well, yeah, and you don't know, even on, from a buyer standpoint, you're just kind of going off of what you're being told by the sales rep, right? But you don't know if that commodity's been sitting in a container for 4 days waiting to be inspected, so you don't really know just how long of legs that product's going to have. Berries is a little different, because they are picked. That it's like going to Burger King for your berries, right? They don't cook it till it's ordered. Well, they don't pick it till it's ordered.
Yep.
And then even when your orders are in, you don't really know where they're actually going to have your product at. So, you've dealt with this. I've given you a load. It says it's loading here. 3 hours later, oh, sorry, we got to move you.
Yeah.
So it's that type of stuff that, you've got to have that strong carrier base and understanding to deal with those changes and influxes that are they're every day. They just happen. So trying to keep that rate reasonable. From my standpoint, I also got to understand, I don't want to be the guy sitting in the truck for 12 hours waiting for 10 pallets of raspberries. And we try not to keep them held up. We do try to push our weight a little bit and get the sheds to hurry, but a lot of it comes down to, like I said, the communication. If your drivers aren't telling you, hey, I've been here 4 hours untouched, you don't know.
Yep.
And then that brings on the whole new challenge. So communication on the whole produce front is just, it keeps everybody in check and makes for a smoother loading process. So,
yep. Yeah, I've got a good friend who's a customer of ours who his joke all the time, and it's half true, is that his buyers treat produce like they are transporting human organs. That's how much they want to know, right?
right.
They're requiring updates every 2 hours on their
load. Is the heart still beating?
Yeah, exactly. Right? If we don't get this load up there, someone's going to die. And sometimes it feels like that. And I get it from the buyer standpoint, right? We all have a job to do, and it's very difficult. And, when you have to wait 12 hours for a load to get loaded, and then the buyer's harping on you that it's got to get there within the next 8 hours, and it's not physically possible. Like that's just, you just deal with that. It's just part of, you know, what we do. Every produce load, I can honestly say every produce load we move is a hot load, right? I mean, the majority of customers will take it as soon as it hits the dock, because they know it is that just-in-time product, especially like a berries or a cherries, right? I mean, you guys probably don't keep any safety stock of that because it's going to be
safety stock?
Exactly, right? So, you know, you got some of your hardier stuff like your apples and your onions and your potatoes and stuff that, you know, most warehouses do keep some safety stock, but man, some of that other stuff, your leafy greens, your berries, your cherries, those things are completely different animals. And we always talk about, bananas are a nightmare, man. Bananas are tough. There's so many issues with bananas.
For sure.
And there's also, you know, we talk about all the time, there's different tiers of produce too. Like I just mentioned, you know, I can get a certain carrier on an onion load, an apple load, or a potato load, because that stuff usually is staged. You know, that stuff's, they're not harvesting that the same morning, right? Those are usually in the beds. And that's usually a quicker load, except for apples, man. Apples can be a pain in the butt though too, because they're pulling from so many different orchards. And, you know, you'd mentioned earlier about moving sheds. Apples are notorious for that.
Yep.
Right. We basically just know it's probably going to be in the Yakima Valley, but we have no idea where it's actually going to load that day until we know, you know?
Well, that's just it. You know, you get an email from the grower saying, "Hey, I know we planned on loading here, but we don't have that here. We got to load it here." And, you know, I probably make too many of those phone calls every day. I know you've been sitting there for 2 hours, but I need you to go down the road a bit.
Sorry, go down, you know, different shed. Sorry.
Yeah. So
that happens every day. Every day.
You know, and like you said, I mean, some commodities, you know, there is a little bit of, I guess, forecasted volume on it. So you kind of know a day in advance on some of those commodities. And usually by the time the truck is dispatched, all of that has been worked out. So the driver don't normally get to see a lot of it on some of those commodities. But I mean, those are pretty far and few between. But that's what I mean. Patience of the drivers and the carriers and understanding. You almost just got to kind of get your trucks in line and just hold as tight as you can to them, and it kind of makes everything a little easier on every avenue. And you know, I mean, you've been doing it, you know, forever, so that you know that one guy I can call and he's going to take care of it no matter what, right? And if you have 20 of those, I know this one guy and he can take care of it. It makes it a little easier. So, but yeah, it's, you know, I was a produce buyer for a long time, and I understand, you know, trying to keep it fresh, trying to keep inventory just right at the line to make sure that you aren't leaking into safety stock and or, you know, just quality issues. So it's tough. And so we've had to kind of change and do a lot of things different on the logistics side of things just to kind of keep us at pace with everything that needs to happen. So,
yeah, I am notorious for sitting there at Costco to go through as many berries as I can until I find the right one without any, you know, sliminess or anything like that. You know, so like that's where that safety stock goes into, right? Like I'm that asshole, you know, at Costco holding up everybody else at the strawberries because I just want to find that right package because maybe I can
there's one.
Yeah, maybe I can squeeze that one extra day in the fridge out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I still end up wasting half of them because that's just how I am. But so yeah, I mean it's such a challenge. It really is. And with your background, especially on the buying side, you understand it from soup to nuts, right? So it's great that you're able to give a lot of the insight on this. You know, we as a company work with a lot of produce shippers, growers, receivers. And so that's why I thought that Dustin would be the perfect guest for our first podcast. And really quick, we are running out of time here shortly, but how do you think the rest of the year is going to unfold? If you had your magic 8 ball, and you didn't use it to win the lottery, what would you say that it was saying about the produce market for the next 6 months?
My magic 8 ball always says the same thing when I flip it over. Try again.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
So, but I mean, as smooth as the holidays is gone, and this first little part of the year, and talking with all you experts out in the field, um, I don't think that we're going to be going into any real big ups or downs. Just from my view, it should maintain pretty flat. But with that said, Pandora's box is always kind of cracked open. And it's just going to take a little windstorm to blow the lid off, and who knows where we'll end up. So, but as of right now, I mean, everything's looking pretty flat, and looks like it should finish off about the same. So, long as we don't have any major, issues or anything, it should ride out.
Yeah, I kind of echo that same sentiment. I don't see anything, knock on wood, no hurricanes or anything disastrous happening outside of that. I don't really see much of the market shifting at all for the rest of the year. There's still, it's still an interesting economy out there. People are still strapped, and it seems like we're probably going to end up pretty flat from last year, which, I mean, honestly, a normal year has been kind of nice to have versus what we've had the last several years, right? I mean, it all started in 19, and then after that, it's just been kind of a blur. So,
yeah, I think I remember a good day like 2018 in August sometime was the last one until like recently. So, yeah, we've been through the ringer. We got tossed in that pit of fire, and glad we all kind of pulled together and made it all happen, and now we can kind of chill for just a minute. But it's trucking. It can change overnight, so we'll just, like you said, knock on wood and just kind of ride out the rest of the year, hopefully, and kind of see where we're at the beginning. So
yeah, there's definitely never a shortage of challenges when it comes to trucking, right? So it doesn't matter what time of year or how smooth things have gone the last couple of days. You never know what's going to happen. But, well, Dustin, I really appreciate you jumping on, being our first guest.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and it's great to catch up. Dustin, like I had mentioned, Dustin and I have been friends for a long time. One of the best minds when it comes to produce, when it comes to logistics in our industry that I know. I am sad that your camera didn't work. You have one of the most big beards I've ever seen.
We'll have to redo it again and get the technical side of it working.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely have you on again. Probably before. It'd be great to have you on right before the Yuma season kicks off. And we can do an episode just on that Yuma transition. It's really cool for a lot of people who don't know about what we often refer to as the Death March, which is they literally pack up all of their equipment from Salinas and head to Yuma. And it's like miles of trucks, right? And then they do the exact same thing in the springtime. So people who aren't familiar with that, it's really cool.
Maybe we could do a live podcast from the field.
Yeah, we could. That'd actually be good. That'd be good. We got our own warehouses in Yuma and Salinas, so I'm usually out there when the transition happens anyway. So that's a good idea. It might be fun.
Yeah, that'd be a good time.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. And I really look forward to continuing this podcast. And once again, Dustin, thank you. So for everybody else, thank you for joining us for Crossing the Finish Line. And I will see you again in a couple weeks.
Thank you.